I'm simply asking you to go online with a presence of mind, to be the person online that you claim to be in real life. Hi, beautiful people. Today we're discussing the controversy surrounding Netflix's Cuties. And if you're looking for my firm opinion, you're not gonna get it, because this video is all about thinking for yourself, especially when it comes to these controversial big issues. But before we begin, my memoir, On Her Knees, is available for pre-sale. The more sales I receive prior to the release, the more likely this book will be a success. I'm dreaming of a book tour. I would love to meet you all in person, so please go pre-order your copy today. Okay, so we're gonna dive into Cuties. This is the perfect opportunity to discuss QAnon, exploitation, and media literacy, which is not as boring as it sounds, I promise. First, what is Cuties? Cuties is a French film by first-time director Maimouna Ducouré. Excuse me if I butcher that. Cuties released in France by the title Mignon and debuted to a warm reception at the Sundance Film Festival. Cuties tells the story of an 11-year-old girl, Amy, who, like Maimouna, emigrated to France from Senegal. In the film, Amy joins a group of girls preparing for a local dance contest, for which they craft, quote, increasingly risque routines, copying what they've seen on social media. Maimouna explained that we as adults have not given children the tools to grow up healthy in our society. I wanted to open people's eyes to what's truly happening in schools and on social media. I wanted adults to spend 96 minutes seeing the world through the eyes of an 11-year-old girl as she lives 24 hours a day. These scenes can be hard to watch, but are no less true as a result. It's also worth noting that Maimouna wrote this film after she spent, quote, a year and a half interviewing pre-adolescent girls, trying to understand their notion of what femininity was and how social media was affecting this idea. So her statement that these scenes can be hard to watch, but are no less true, becomes meaningful in the fact that she interviewed all of these prepubescent girls and asked them about their real life experience so she could accurately portray it on film. I was also surprised that Cuties had a heavy religious message. As noted by Vox, quote, while we do see young girls twerking, the film frames dance as an insidious corrupting tool that could rob the dancers of their innocence. It's actually quite a conservative viewpoint. The film showed that both Muslim and secular culture have the power to control and oppress women through our sexuality. We watched the lead character Amy navigate both cultures while entering womanhood, which a lot of us Christians can relate to. And I do wonder if the American reception to this film would have been any different had Amy turned to Jesus in the end in lieu of Allah. So I'll begin to tell you my little journey with this film, because it was a journey. I started my research by watching a half dozen YouTubers, both conservative and liberal, and the consensus was Cuties is trash and has no redeeming qualities. Blaire White and Ready to Glare were both outraged and disgusted. I rarely find disagreement with these women, except Blaire, Trump. Holy hell. How? I don't understand. Aside from that, I'm usually just watching their videos and nodding like, yeah, I agree. So when you consider media literacy, you'll notice that I first went to sources that I trust, that I generally agree with, whether it be on YouTube or in the media. So even before I watched Cuties, I was primed to hate it. A lot of these videos even said, you don't even have to watch the movie, just take it from me, it's trash. And let me be clear, I found Cuties disturbing, and no one can force you to view disturbing or challenging art or cinema. However, in this very polarizing, complicated moment of social media, I would challenge you to exercise your ability to say, I don't know, or I can't speak to this, if you haven't researched or viewed something on your own to form an opinion. And this includes when you speak about people, policies, or politics. And this is so important because we, especially as faith-filled people, should not be the ones promoting and spreading false information. We can do better than this. So I'm using Cuties as an exercise to practice media literacy. According to Media Literacy Now, an organization that promotes the education of media literacy for K-12 students, media literacy is the ability to decode media messages, assess the influence of those messages on thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and to create media thoughtfully and conscientiously. Though we may not be journalists or the media itself, now that we have access to share-based platforms, aka social media, like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, it's becoming more of our responsibility to trade accurate and fact-based information. Because if we we as consumers go ahead and spread lies, then we ironically become the fake news we claim to hate. And trust me, I know that I'm asking you to do something difficult. It's so tempting to see a story or even a meme that appeals to your personal belief system, be provoked emotionally, and immediately share it without checking the post's validity. One interesting example from my life is that I noticed a conservative family member post this cartoon. It shows a world in which the mainstream liberal media is ignoring a major issue. But as someone who ingests liberal media, I knew this cartoon was untrue. The same issue was on every news network I watched. And one of the vile stories I was watching implicated both beloved liberal and conservative figures. Because predatory behavior is not exclusive to political parties. It's not exclusive to religion or lack thereof. Predators are at church and in Hollywood, let's be real. Trafficking itself is something I became aware of through a Christian organization called Treasures, which helps women leave the industry if they want to. And I learned about it through my own mom, who is passionate for this cause. She's had people sign petitions. She's attended marches. I've also seen Blake Lively raise awareness in Hollywood, while Ashton Kutcher and Demi Moore founded Thorn in 2012, which engineers technologies to identify victims being sold online. Religious people and Hollywood elites made me more aware of this problem. So at this point, I hope you will concede that we are not enemies in this. Both sides really care about human trafficking, especially when it comes to children. It's also been very difficult to watch Christians, especially ones with adorable, relatable Instagrams, drink the Kool-Aid and share conspiracy theories as truth, such as QAnon, which is 100%, I promise you, a conspiracy. I'll link a great article below from Christianity Today, which explains in part why mainstream Christians have become susceptible to believe this conspiracy. Is trafficking a real problem? Yes, absolutely. But the numbers have been inflated by conspiracy groups like QAnon based on inaccurate statistics. For example, QAnon has said that 800,000 children go missing every year and that over 70% of those children are trafficked. This is, thank God, wildly inaccurate. According to Rain, the majority of child abusers are someone the child or family knows. Also, I will link this Slate article below, but according to a 2002 study, it is true that 797,500 people under 18 were reported missing in a one-year period. Many of those were family abductions, and only 115 were, quote, stereotypical kidnappings. And some individuals got entered into the database multiple times after disappearing on multiple occasions. So there's another quick lesson in media literacy. We can get very triggered by seeing one Instagram post where 70% of 800,000 kids are being trafficked every year. That is horrifying. It makes you want to hit repost. But if we are believing and then sharing a lie, we are perpetuating fear and misinformation, which is the last thing we need on social media. I'll put more QAnon resources below. Do that research on your own, please. And with all that established, let's get back to Cuties. As I said, Cuties released in France. It had a warm reception at Sundance, and most of us never heard of it. That is, until Netflix bought and began promoting the movie with this poster. I'm gonna be honest, I saw it and didn't even blink. Between pageants and dance competitions, I'm admittedly desensitized. But when I became aware that this was the original French poster, my first thought was, of course, Americans tried to sell this element. And guess what? It worked, because tens of millions of us are watching Cuties or talking about it. Sells, and this is a problem that, ironically, director Maimouna was trying to point out. She said, quote, "I made Cuties to start a debate about the of children in society today, so that maybe, just maybe, politicians, artists, parents, and educators could work together to make a change that will benefit children for generations to come." Which brings me to my slight disagreement with Blaire and Blaire. My understanding, if I'm not mistaken, is that they believe the film itself exploited children, therefore negating its goal to confront the issue of childhood exploitation and. But from the result I've seen in the media and the sheer views this movie has, I wonder if Maimouna achieved her goal, albeit not the way she imagined. Also, we could argue that the more aware and genuinely horrified we are by the effects of social media on young people, the more likely we are to hopefully fight and change it. When I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, no one was allowed to advertise adult products to kids, racier content had warning labels, and many shows had to to appear late night when kids were in bed. The world without the internet was still complicated to regulate, but adults did what they could to protect us from media. In Cuties, the director reminds us again and again that these are children. Despite what they're wearing or how they're dancing, they have no clue what sex is. They are embodying what looks like, but it's actually just little girls replicating what they see and admire online. And let's be perfectly clear, I agree with Blaire and Blaire. These dance scenes were horrifying. They were disturbing. I cannot justify the length of them, and I cannot justify how they were shot. But the movie begs the question, adults, what do we believe 11-year-olds are experiencing and doing in real life? Again, Maimouna interviewed prepubescent girls and wrote this film based on what they said. So Cuties, unfortunately, is showing us a slice of that reality. And as most of us know from the disaster of purity culture, the answer is not going to be to put more shame and fear onto our young people. The answer, as always, will be to educate. Kids need the cognitive tools to separate fact from fiction, to discern age-appropriate behavior, to recognize when or why their self-esteem is being affected by the internet. The suicide rates of young women is skyrocketing. Young people need the tools to handle the internet. And we, as adults, need to advocate for them and lead by example, which is difficult because the majority of us adults aren't handling social media well ourselves. And of course we're not. Not only are we the first generations to try to figure out social media, but social media was actually built with the ability to harm us. In the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, they interviewed former higher-ups from Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and more to explain how their platforms were intentionally designed to addict and to advertise to us. Even when their creators had good intentions, like adding a like button to increase positivity and self-esteem, they found the opposite effect of young people feeling inadequate, lonely, and depressed. One of the last things I'll say is, yes, I am in a conundrum over how Cuties was shot. These actors are real children who are likely as naive to as we imagine them to be. Did Maimouna herself exploit these child actresses? And if so, did she have to exploit children to show us how detrimental the internet can be? And this is where you practice media literacy for yourself. Would this movie have been as impactful if the actresses were 18 or even 16? To what limit can we justify art in its attempt to do something good by doing something bad? We can also ask ourselves how we might feel about this movie had the director been an old white guy instead of a French woman from Senegal. These are some questions to wrestle with, and you have a right to your own opinion. I just hope through this video that I've shown you an example of how to practice media literacy. So in conclusion, here are some questions you can ask yourself to practice media literacy. Am I sharing something factual? Can I recognize the advertising presented to me? Can I acknowledge that the news I'm being fed is customized to my likes, and therefore I may not be getting the whole story? If I share this, will it cause more fracturing and division among my family and friends? Is there a more compassionate way to express my views? Am I posting to boost self-esteem or to feel companionship? Are there more tangible, in real life ways I can connect to those I love without the internet? And these questions are not about guilt or shame or taking on the burden of everyone else's feelings. I'm simply asking you to go online with a presence of mind, to be the person online that you claim to be in real life. And as spiritual beings, we stay accountable for our behavior and we can't hide behind our phone screen. And that's it. I love you all so much. And please, please, please go buy your copy of On Her Knees. I cannot wait for this to release. I can't wait for you all to have it in your hands. I love you all so much. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends, donate to my Patreon or Venmo if you can. I love you all so much. God bless.